welcome to Planetary Health First, Mars Next. And we got an amazing group of esteemed panel today, guests, and we're going to be driving all things that are necessary in digital health, whatever you name it. You can't move forward if you don't go together. So our topic today is leveraging strategic partnerships in health tech. We got some amazing guests up on the screen to my right, or however you see it, is Susan Sly. And she is an AI entrepreneur, CEO and founder of the Pause Technology Incorporated, angel investor finalist, top women in AI, thought leader in AI ethics, edge, AI strategy architect, co-founder at Radius AI, and she's a rainmaker, and then MIT Sloan, which I'm sure you've heard of. We got Tom Kluz, and he is a 20-year seasoned venture capitalist, and he's currently running a $100 million corporate venture fund. We got Humza Raees, and he's driving partnerships at Be Well. And we have another partnership driver, Andy, to the bottom. And they'll get in a little more how they're different, because healthcare is a big space. Probably one I'm saying is probably a payer, a provider, or whatever. They can get into that as we lead this discussion. But let's... Susan, if you could just quickly introduce yourself, please. You're on mute.
Absolutely. Yeah, my pleasure, Michael. Thanks for having me. And it's great to be here. A little bit about my background, especially as a woman in AI, since we're less than 22% of the workforce. So I have been, in my previous role, the co-CEO, co-founder of a computer vision company that did the largest deployment at scale for retail, and we also worked in the healthcare sector. And then last December, I left to start my passion project, which is helping women navigate menopause using artificial intelligence and generative AI, multimodal AI. And as we get into this conversation about healthcare, just a fun stat about that currently in the United States, there are 50 million women navigating menopause. And McKinsey came out with a report and said 41% of them want to leave their jobs due to lack of support. So I'm looking forward to the conversation and my esteemed colleagues learning from them. Thanks, Michael.
Yeah, thanks for your work. I'll tell you, I have a wife. So anyway, I know, separately from that whole, Tom, anyway, go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
Sure. Pleasure to be on the podcast with everyone. This is super exciting. My name is Tom Kluz. Been doing corporate venture capital for the last decade and a half. My background is kind of a mixture of financial investing, financial services, and entrepreneurship. I kind of started my career, cut my teeth into the venture capital industry at a large kind of $41 billion plus asset management, kind of diversified investment professional company. And then became an operator for a period of time, and cut my teeth into startups, sold that company, and then worked at two different CVCs. One is more healthcare services oriented, so kind of the topic that Susan just mentioned with helping women navigate menopause. This was actually, we worked on a startup with that CBC to try to build a software application to help women navigate both menopause and then pregnancy. So kind of do different points in time in the femtech universe. So I'm really excited about that topic and looking forward to digging in today.
Cool. Humza, please.
Yeah, Humza Raees, based out of Atlanta. I'm the director of partnerships here at Be Well Connected Health. I've had the distinct pleasure of working with Andy for the last few months here at my role. But I started my career in the health plan space. I worked at Anthem Blue Cross and Blue Shield, formerly known as Anthem, now currently known as Elevance. Then I jumped over into the management consulting world, did a few years there, and then jumped over into the startup space where I worked at a variety of different healthcare or health tech kind of organizations. Leading partnerships and doing a variety of work in that space as well.
Andy.
Well, Michael, thank you so much for having me on the podcast today. So a little bit about me. My name is Andy Harlan. I've spent my career for the past 15 years in healthcare technologies. I'm also from Nashville, Tennessee, which is otherwise known as healthcare capital of the U.S. My current position is SVP of Partnerships at BeWell, where I lead both partnerships and business development.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that great backdrop, that great introduction. So we're talking about strategic partnerships today. And how do we want to get this started? I would like to, Tom, as a venture capitalist, how do you see, like, from your perspective, driving the value of partnerships? If you could just give your sense of what really is the crux of this, Tom.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, so kind of, I guess two viewpoints on this, right? So, I think strategic partnerships is a kind of a all-encompassing term. So I think kind of have to define what kind of partnership we're talking about here. But I think from a corporate venture capital perspective, we live and breathe the strategic partnership mantra, right? So when we make an investment in a startup company, the holy grail behind the investment is to forge a strategic partnership with the mothership, right? So our corporate sponsor. So that's always a big win for us. I think that there's lots of challenges in getting those partnerships up and running, right? So I think it's there's the perfect strategic partnership is one where both the corporate sponsor benefit from the relationship as well as the company, right? And so I think it's a wonderful thing. I think it's great when you get there, when you get to give an example of a really interesting strategic partnership that I recently experienced. We invested in a medical device company, and my mothership is a large medtech service provider. We have a distribution arm, and we have one of the largest distribution networks to hospitals in the country due to my mothership's affiliation with this entity. And so I think when we initially made the investment, we had that sort of mantra in mind that we would put the company in touch with the distributor and forge a partnership there. I think at the end of the day, it's really a distribution arrangement between the two companies, but for us, it's highly strategic. It helps the portfolio company. It helps us candidly because it makes us look like value-added investors, and that ultimately what any corporate VC wants. And if you find a corporate VC that doesn't want that, then they're not, in my opinion, they're not worth very much. So, but yeah, I think strategic partnerships are great. They require a lot of creativity. They require a lot of tenacity, but they're at least from a corporate venture capital perspective, probably the number one KPI that I hold myself accountable to.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Susan, from your experience.
Well, I love what Tom said, and I want to jump in there as well. So we saw Tom will probably nod, some very conflated valuations and investments by VCs, especially not just in healthcare, but also in AI in general. And then something we start to see late 2022, 2023 is funds looking at the investments they had made and trying to recoup value and saying, well, is there another company that I can invest in that can partner efficiently with this company? So when we think of end-to-end solutions. And so we're still seeing that trend in terms of wearing my investor hat, that investment side. So I look at my investments and I say, what other technologies can you partner with in order to create greater valuations, real valuations, not conflated valuations in those companies? And when we look at, I'm going to talk about women's health and and the problems that women are facing, just to piggyback on what I said earlier. So there in my humble opinion, who better to solve women's health problems than startups with at least one female founder who's lived that, whether it's reproductive health, menopause, whatever it is. And so the partnerships are really critical. And I'll share a little bit about one of the things I did differently as a second-time AI founder. So before we began to architect our solution, Michael, what I did is I looked at who would be the ideal partners in terms of the hyperscalers. And fortunately, I must have done something well previously, because we had those hyperscalers approach me. So Microsoft approached me, and Hewlett Packard approached me, and we have others I can't disclose at the moment. And we started to say, if we could create a platform that would really positively impact women going through menopause, from the insurance providers, help them to lower the fees that they're paying for those women, to get the women the support they need, what will we need to build in terms of that infrastructure? And when we look at AI is very energy hungry. My background being computer vision. So sorry if this is a little too technical. We're talking about big data payloads, especially for 24/7 computer vision data. It's just massive. And so I said, given the AI race, if we could solidify these hyperscaler partnerships and create our environments for our data and creating our own LLMs, we wouldn't be competing with other people to get those resources. So the thing I want to say to the startup founder watching this, or the investor watching this who invests like I do in early stage, usually safe round, early pre-revenue startups, is that you want to take a look at the partnerships with the hyperscalers. Microsoft, we work with Sally Frank. She is the global head of all healthcare startups for Microsoft in the world. On the HPE side, we're working with their team. I have a long-standing relationship with them, their AI team. They announced with NVIDIA at HP Discover this year the new PCAI, the private AI cloud. It allows startups like myself to have a private cloud, which normally it's very cost prohibitive. So take a look at those partnerships. There are a lot of great ecosystems out there, and don't try and build the partnership after you're more established, because as you grow up, you get the mentors, you get the support. These partners will also lead you to your future customers. So that's what I want to say there, but high five to Tom, because I was nodding my head with everything you said. So such a great conversation.
Awesome. Thank you, Susan. And Humza and Andy, I don't mean to speak of you guys as in pairs, but I kind of will. So just if you guys want to do the tap dance, and who wants to be next on this one?
Yeah, I'll go ahead. I think, Susan, you're absolutely right about the hyperscaler space. So, vendors like AWS, GCP, Microsoft, Oracle, and others. Nearly every single healthcare organization has adopted cloud within their infrastructure, meaning that every single one of our prospects within the health tech space has also already partnered with one of those cloud providers. And every single one of those cloud providers has these incentives and marketplace programs and credits and investments and PR and co-innovation. And so I completely agree with you. I think that, one of the things that we've done is partner with AWS. Because we're fully built on top of them. And what they do for us is they offer a path to market to get to the right personas at the right target accounts and actually partner in a co-sell motion. So if you're thinking from a startup perspective, you have every dollar counts, right? And so you can't go hire 10 sales reps and give them $1 million quota a piece and expect that you're going to get to your number. You're just going to increase, your burn. And so you really need to find mutually valuable partners. And I think those hyperscalers are ones that we've seen a lot of value in, at least I've seen a lot of value in over my career, to really drive that value, drive co-innovation, and get in front of the right people.
Excellent, Andy. And I'm glad you said what you did, because I was thinking AWS, because we've been lucky to have your founder on, and Chewy, and another one on a prior show. We're talking a lot about the partnership and scalability with AWS. Humza, would you please share on that?
Yeah, I think AWS has done a lot for us, right? Like they're putting us into a variety of different accelerator programs, making a lot of resources available. We've been able to deploy really innovative and cutting edge use cases built on their technology, resources, and accelerators. So for example, we've recently rolled out a scheduling use case that is pretty unique and first to market that's fully generative AI based natural language processing. And it's all built on AWS's Claude Sonnet LLM. So they've given us the resources, the tools, the accelerators, if you will, to be able to provide this cutting edge technology and be the first to market and drive this innovation and these, value to the consumer at the end of the day.
Excellent. So when we get into building effective partnerships, this is kind of to the panel, like what are those key elements? What are those KPIs, the challenges, the good, the bad, the ugly? Let's just throw it out there.
I will take that first, and then maybe get some insight from the crew. But I think when it comes to partnerships, you have to have you have to actually drive value together towards a client. You have to drive value. There has to be ROI there. If that doesn't exist, stop. It's not going to work. The second thing you have to have is you actually have to have cultural alignment, because you might be able to drive value, but if your cultures don't actually align, the partnership's never going to work. And so if you have those two things, all the rest of it is really, on top of the partnership. Like, you're just going to do your typical go-to market functions. You're going to do your webinars. You're going to build joint collateral, but you have to have that better together story. You have to drive value and ROI, because the days of selling, anything to anyone is done. Like, everything is now tied to value. And so if you can do that really well as a group, then you're going to do well for your clients. And if your clients win, you will win as partners.
Yeah,
Andy, I love, or Tom, did you want to jump in?
No, go for it. Go for it. Sorry.
Andy, I love what you said about driving the value together, and going back to the granularity of startup dollars, like as we've all shared, right? As a founder, your most valuable commodity is time, but you're always raising money. There's always resources. So with these partnerships, whether it is, compute resources or MDF. So for those who are watching, don't know, MDF are the marketing development funds. So all of these hyperscalers have them. And so for us, we've been very, very fortunate especially with our partnership with HPE, where they've put a significant amount of MDF behind us. And that includes things like, I'm leaving for the Women in AI event in New York for Fashion Week, and we have top women from all of the hyperscalers coming in. So they're throwing marketing behind us, videos behind us. They'll put me on stages, Women's Health Innovation Summit in Boston, that gets me out in front of VCs. And so the resources I have, you asked Michael for, I'll just be raw and real, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Sometimes I have seen, and not with these amazing gentlemen, because I know they wouldn't have this, I've seen a very limited view of the hyperscaler partnerships. And it's often from the engineering side, where they're not necessarily looking at the business case for it. When you have a company willing to put a significant amount of dollars behind you with marketing, and sometimes the engineers are limited by, oh, I'm only seeing what AWS has to offer, but GCP offers this, or there's an NVIDIA SDK, but, blah, blah, blah. And really, we want to begin. My father, who just passed on July 10th, was a brilliant engineer. And he always used to say to me, Susan, the engineers will never want to release product. The business will always want to release the product before the engineers are ready. We are seeing a very unique time in technology where I know I expect my engineers to be business people, and I expect the business people to also be engineers. And we can't afford to have all these silos at the pace that technology is accelerating. So I think that looking at the partnerships, not just from what the technological infrastructure is, but also from the business opportunities, is critical.
I just wanted to add something, Susan. I usually try to stay out of it, but I think with the technology and the video, when you hear that they're going to change the world with nursing and this, it seems like you need business, you need clinicians, you need all the people to get it right. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, that's awesome. No, I was just kind of thinking, so I agree with everything everybody just said. I think that I would sort of double click on culture. Cultural alignment is hyper important. I think strategic partnerships, you're sort of, you're dating, you're not getting married. It's not an acquisition, right? It's not like a complete and full sort of, you know, uh, end-to-end transaction, so to speak. But in order for it to really be successful, I do think you need cultural alignment. And I think you need cultural alignment from, sort of the business ideation side, the value proposition ideation side of the equation, right? I think the entire team affiliated with the partnership, whether it's a multi-party or you got two folks, two organizations, three organizations, I think cultural alignment has to be there. I personally witnessed that, having invested capital on behalf of a Japanese corporate, where the best partnerships are the ones where, um, you know, startups move really, really fast. They like to operate. We're using the term hyperscaler here. I think startups are all sort of little hyperscalers in their own mind, right? So they want to be bigger than they currently are. And I actually don't even know what hyperscaler is. You guys have to define that for me, by the way. But I just think it's cool.
It's out of Star Wars.
Yeah, exactly. I'm imagining I'm in a cockpit and I'm shooting that out of the Death Star. But no, I think startups are moving a mile a second, and they're eager at becoming unicorns. And in my experience, Japanese corporates a little bit more methodical, a little bit slower pace in terms of, we can't take any shortcuts to get to our destination here. I think to Susan and Andy's point, the ideation, the value proposition, that's absolutely foundational. If that hasn't been established from the beginning, it's like, what the heck are we doing here, right? What's the point of all this? And in fact, the strategic partnerships that I've seen fall apart are for two reasons. One, the cultural alignment is not there, right? One entity doesn't work at the same pace that the other. And then to maybe even more pertinently, the value proposition was wrong the whole way through. And so you discover that, months down the road when you've started either building product or structuring the business model around it. And then we realize, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. This is not really benefiting all parties. So yeah, I think all very, very astute points. Just wanted to kind of throw the cultural alignment piece in there as well.
I also think they're getting a little bit more complicated. So going back to some of your challenges, we often see overlap in capabilities and value from some of our partners. And so to make this work, you have to be transparent about which partner's capabilities are better for the end client. What is the better together story? I actually call this type of partnership co-opetition, because technically you compete, but for the value of the client, you come together and drive exponentially more value. We've seen that quite a few times in our space, just because we have a huge platform, tons of benefits, 3 different layers of value, and we compete on every single layer of that value. And so it's finding the right partners that come together and all have one goal in mind, which is drive value, drive ROI, do things better for your clients. That's what's really going to make these work. But it is a challenge, especially when you get 2 product leaders or 2 tech leaders in the room and my product's better, my capability is better. Sometimes you have to say, we're going to wind this piece down so we can implement you as a part of this overall better together story.
I'd love to
Andy,
hear. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah. No, just the topic of conversation at dinner last night was about, I guess, co-opetition, right? And so wanted to get your thoughts, and the CEO that I was meeting with told me that he wanted to forge a sort of a partnership or a co-opetition, if you will, with a sort of arch nemesis in the industry, right? To develop a really win-win partnership for a third party, right? So how do you sort of, what's the group's take on that? I feel like that's a little bit of a slippery slope, particularly with IP and disclosing kind of unique competitive advantages in the market, right? It's a pretty risky move. You obviously want to keep your friends close and your enemies closer, but how exactly do you orchestrate that?
Do you want me to take that one, or someone else want to take a shot?
I'll jump in. Since again, where Michael said, talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? Co-opetition. I think years ago, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Wayne Dyer. He was an amazing author, business philosopher. He was a friend of mine. And he used to say, Susan, ego stands for edging God out. And it doesn't matter if you believe in God or not, it'll just use it as an analogy. Where I see challenge with co-opetition, Tom, great question, is when you have someone whose ego is bigger than their bank account. And I have seen with startups that they have, I'm going to use an example. So we talked about NVIDIA SDKs for lay people watching. It stands for Software Development Kit. So for instance, in the computer vision space, I'm an advisor to a couple of computer vision companies. The NVIDIA has out of the box SDKs for vision that for the retail environment, but those have been essentially built up in a lab. So you could have a startup that says, I'm going to partner with NVIDIA and I'm going to use their SDK, that I'm going to refine it in the real world and get something that I can launch in the market. It's going to cost me less money. I'm going to have that partnership and it's going to be a great thing. But then sometimes you have people who will say, well, we'll just build it in-house. Now that's going to cost a lot more money. Now you're turning your back on a potential partner like NVIDIA that could have an amazing go-to-market motion with you. So ego does get in the way of these partnerships. When we look at standing up a tech platform, I'm going to give a shout out to, I have no skin in the game with this one, to my friend Zach Klima at Wait Time. He has partnered effectively with Intel. He is not a technologist, and I think he just got the Ohio State Stadium. And what their CV technology does is they're doing, crowd wait times essentially in these large areas. And he said, you know what, I'm going to partner. I'm going to take every single opportunity I can with them, and I'm going to focus on doing what I do well, which is getting out into the market. So Tom, to your excellent point, I think ego gets in the way a lot of the time. You don't always have to build it yourself. We're living in an environment where Microsoft, Intel, all of these companies, they have a lot more money than the startups do. And if they have good SDKs there, I would just suggest partner, figure out the cultural alignment, and then get out there. And the other thing I'll say, investor hat, and I'm sure you all will agree with me on this one. When I talk to a startup, I say, what is your exit strategy? And if well is the first two words, I'm not investing in them. But the partnership should also be strategic to say, from a competition standpoint, it's okay to be acquired by your competitor. And that happens all the time. So why wouldn't you want to be that person who's out there building those strategic partnerships? Because if your your competitor, what was the word, Andy?
Co-opetition.
I need another coffee. If you're competitive collaborator, let's call it, if they're a larger startup than you are, that's okay. Go out there, get acquired, be part of the winning team. Why wouldn't you? But don't let your ego get in the way. And I see that. And Tom, I'm sure you've seen it time and time again, where the founder has the ego and it's just never going to work. So, yeah.
I think we're also starting to see a new opportunity within co-opetition. So in the rise, I'll give you a perfect example just from here at BeWell. So we've always operated in a SaaS model. So think we host, we deliver technologies configured to that organization, integrated in with their ecosystem of vendors. But over the past few years, we started to develop an embed strategy. So if you think digital transformation efforts, some of the enterprise orgs already have huge applications. They don't necessarily want to deprecate that to work with us. And so embeddables and SDKs. And so as more organizations start to shift towards an embeddable and an SDK model, co-opetition will actually increase and the opportunities to partner will increase. So then you can actually just grab the value of the capability and the ROI from that and add it to your value and ROI and then combine your costs. And so I think we're going to start to see that increase substantially over the next few years. It seems like Everyone's asking for it. We did it out of necessity. It was an ask from some of our clients, but it's actually opened up new go-to-market models for us, especially in the enterprise space. So we're now viewed as a capability area rather than having to be the full SaaS platform. Also running in tenant, I think there's another value to that from a procurement perspective, from a technology and security perspective, from a cost perspective. If the tenant is deployed by the client, so then you as a company you're not absorbing all of that compute cost. That's huge. That can help you get a price that's going to make sense and scale. And there's no rate limiter on scaling the number of users because you're not incurring that cost. So we're starting to see some of those models emerge in terms of a partner perspective. I think we're only going to see that start to increase over time.
Does the room have any advice on go or no go, like how to get there, really accelerate the process of speed dating?
Well, I love that. I love the analogy. It goes back to, what Tom and Andy said. It's really the cultural alignment. And as a startup, you want to be very clear on what your cultural values are, right? So for us, we have 2 core values. That's it: trust and wow. And so whether we're working with an external vendor or a partner, that the trust has to be there, right? And our objective is to deliver both to our users and become the most trusted menopause platform that exists. So firstly, my advice would be get clear on what your core values are and don't just pay them lip service, but really own them, walk them. One of my engineers said to me the other day, as we're just to level set for everyone, we're preparing to deploy our product in the next few weeks. And she said to me, for this one feature, Susan, do you want it to yield trust or wow? And another engineer said, that's like asking Susan to choose between her children. The answer is always both all the time, right? And if the feature isn't going to have that, then we're not deploying. So that would be my first thing. And for our partnerships that we have, we have experienced both of those things. And also as a CEO, whether it's an employee or a partner, if they don't align with our 2 core values, not 12, not 20, we know that that's not the right relationship for us. So it allows us, Michael, to make decisions quickly and to off-ramp relationships quickly as well.
So where do we go from here? Like, we've covered a lot of ground here today. You've hit on a lot of trends, where the market's going, with I think the big drivers, the computing power, that energy demand. Where do you see the future going with this?
I actually, maybe I'll comment, but I want to ask Susan first. There seems to be an overwhelming need to infuse generative AI, LLMs, machine learning into pretty much everything that we do. It can also be a buzzword because now every single company is powered by AI. And so maybe my question, Susan, for you, when you think about organizations that are starting right now, what would your advice be to them about how to infuse AI into their platform, where to infuse AI, and where they're going to get the most bang for their buck?
That's an amazing question. And thank you so much, Andy, for asking the question. I'm going to step back just for a moment because something that really concerns me is the healthcare shortage we're already experiencing in terms of certified and experienced practitioners. So the estimate, I believe, is by 2030, we'll have a nursing shortage of 1.2 million nurses. Physicians, that number is approximately 124,000, give or take. And I think about, as a woman who's soon to be 52, who just lost her 84-year-old dad, who is in assisted living when he passed, and 10,000 people turning 65 every day. The overall, when I speak about AI and healthcare is the bright spot. When I think about what we can do with AI, whether it's using computer vision for in-room patient monitoring or using generative AI to be both predictive and prescriptive, I think there are a lot of bright spots. What I would say in terms of AI is the following, and this is maybe my vanguard opinion. I think there's room for generative AI applications within any company that is building a data set, because how are you going to sort through the data? Sure, you'll use machine learning, but how are you going to actually be able to sift through the data to find out something predictive that illustrates that you're on the right track for what you're trying to offer for your end users? So that's the first thing. Mm-hmm. Another thing in healthcare, just coming from my nerdy background in computer vision, I think that we're going to see, I'm not doing any computer vision right now personally, but we're going to see a lot of opportunities in computer vision. And I just want to cast the vision there. So think about in-room patient monitoring, where I can have maybe a single wide GPU on a stand and a camera, and I can put it in a patient room, and suddenly one nurse can monitor, 30 rooms at one time, and we can build in those models for things like fall detection, gaze analysis. When the physician changes the medication, we can see how often that patient is, say, up out of their bed, their movement patterns, and then using generative AI to be predictive, right? Based on what the data that person is garnering, and then adding in biometrics, so multimodal. And I think where we're going is, to the latter point, using more IoT devices at the pause. We're also integrated with wearables, so we're able to help a woman get precision recommendations also based on her biometrics. So we're going to see more multimodal AI. I would encourage everyone to be thinking about what other IoT you can use, not just thinking generative AI is sure, it's very sexy, it's a buzz, but most people, except for my colleagues here, might not understand that there is a lot more to generative AI than a conversational agent or producing an image. There are use cases that are coming up for generative AI that can literally save lives. So my advice would be to, number one, understand there are different forms of AI. Number two, every company is an AI company if you're using any AI application. Number three, you don't have to build it in-house. There are a lot of great models out there that you can build on, refine, as Andy said earlier. And number four, the responsible use of AI means that you really are ensuring that whatever your company is trying to achieve, that those recommendations are not being created in a black box, that you do have ground truth in terms of your data and your outputs. I could go on for 6 hours. I'm going to stop.
I love your approach to that. I think the way that we view AI is actually through the lens of driving better consumer experiences. So it's not your typical, like, we're going to save time or allow someone to monitor more patients. And so what we're starting to see is, could you as a consumer ask questions about your longitudinal health record and get an answer back? Could you as a consumer use plain language to search for a provider using your ailment or using a provider search? And could we take the output of that and actually navigate you into different sites of care? And so it's interesting to hear all the different applications, and I'm just really excited to see where it's going to go in the next year. Also, maybe in the next 5 years, a little bit scared of where it's going to go. It could get pretty scary quickly.
That's interesting. I was watching a TED Talk a couple of days ago, and it was actually, well, it was a TED Talk, and then I was watching a podcast on sort of the two existential threat topics around AI, right? So is AI going to take over, and is it going to be smarter than humans and take over the world? And then the other
Skynet,
topic,
right?
which
Skynet.
Exactly. The Skynet debacle. Exactly. And then the topic that Susan talked about earlier, which was, energy efficiency, right? The computer vision is great, very power consumptive, requires a lot of horsepower, not really conducive to a kind of a battery powered system, right? So you got to wire it up, and you're going to use up both a lot of cloud compute and you're going to use up a lot of power on the device, right? So those are the two topics. But the just to kind of backtrack to the point you made, Andy, around how you guys are using AI, I think it sort of aligns well with how I think the tech universe is looking at AI. AI is going to be this. It's not going to be Skynet. It's not going to take over humans. It's going to be
Not yet.
your colleague. It's going to be your mentor. It's going to be your chatbot, a very sophisticated, very robust chatbot that you can sort of ask it loads of questions, right? And I was at a conference a couple of weeks ago, and there was a company. I won't name the name because we're actually looking at possibly investing in them, but it's a really, really interesting platform. What they're able to do is within 30 to 45 seconds, the founder was able to create an avatar of myself, right? So what it did is used AI and aggregated all of this publicly available data about myself from the web, took a photo of me from different angles, recorded a video of me talking, and then was able to create a very, very, very scary sort of deep fake setup, right? Now the good news is there are, you set the limitations of what you want to feed the data set, right? So you say, hey, I don't want to disclose information on my LinkedIn profile. I don't want to disclose certain level of information about me. I don't want to disclose what's, entirely available on the web. But it was incredible. It really, within 45 to seconds, we were able to create a very realistic looking avatar that was able to probably communicate better than I can, right, about myself. It was really incredible. And so I'm a little bit of an optimist and idealist here, but I hope AI makes us better, right? And I see the direction it's going. There's at this point, I'm just blown away by talking to folks like Susan and you, Andy, and you as well, Humza, right? I think you made entrepreneurs that are using AI applications. To me, it's I feel like a kid in a candy store, but I do kind of wonder when's the sort of point of no return on some of these applications, right? I think we have to, I guess maybe a question for the group as I think about it is, what does everybody think about AI ethics, and how do we create checks and balances for AI production, or would that just slow innovation down?
I have a thought on that, and if I may just share just a bright, shiny spot and a personal story to Tom that you inspired me based on what you just said. So when my father, Joe, passed, I was raised by a single dad. So it was back-to-back NFL games on Sundays, and basically raised as a child of an engineer with an engineering brain. And so losing my dad was a gut punch, because it was like losing my mom and my dad in one day. So I decided to make an AI of my dad, Tom. And cool. Because cool. I before he got sick last year, I would call him and he would always give just the best advice. And I felt this void. So my dad, fortunately, he had created his own YouTube channel in front of a green screen. You have to picture this 80-year-old guy, So we had the video, and I fed a GPT I built his resume, a sample of his writing, and then I had it create his final life lessons. And then we took the video from the green screen, we made the video AI, and he spoke at his own funeral. And wow. He gave his 3 parting lessons, and it was so beautiful. And I still have that. So I can talk to that GPT, and it's not my dad. And I know it's not my dad, but it's comforting to me. And just to be, vulnerable as a Gen X woman, right? And so I heard of a man with stage 4 cancer with young children, and he built an AI of himself. He's dying. And so his kids have something. So when we talk about those types of things, Andy said it earlier, AI is like, we call our Gen AI, I can't release her name yet, it's trademarked. She named herself, she's your menopause companion. And we've had sexual health experts, physicians, therapists engage with her to battle test her. She's so freaking amazing. Like, she's who you want to go to at 2 a.m. So this is all beautiful and wonderful. When we're talking about the singularity and AI ethics, so the singularity is that point in time when AI exceeds human capacity, which I think we're very close to. The thing I would say is, it's one thing for us to say, these are the guardrails. Mm-hmm. Our enemies will not produce the same guardrails, and we cannot be naive to that. So as an AI ethicist, I would say the following. Number one, and I said the same thing. I was having a conversation with the Secretary of Labor, Julie Su, at CES earlier this year. You cannot say healthcare AI. Oh, guess what? Humza, Andy, guess what? You have to follow the same rules as Mark Zuckerberg does for Instagram. That's ridiculous, because that is going to prohibit advancement and actually saving lives. We can't hold our DoD to the same standards of AI use that we would other applications of AI. So we have to look at the different applications. That's number one. Number two is not being naive to the fact that those that would wish us harm are going to use ethical AI. And in that, we do need oversight. And the third thing I'm going to say, I said it earlier, every company out there is an AI company. Home Depot, Target, McDonald's, you're all AI companies. Do you have someone on your board that understands AI? And the second thing I'm going to say is, do you have a board that represents your end users? Mark Zuckerberg, 51% of Facebook, Instagram users are women. He created an AI board. It is all men. No offense, gentlemen. I'm just saying it doesn't represent the end user. And every company in America right now needs to take a look at their board and ask who has AI experience. You need to have people with AI experience. You need to have people that represent your end users. If not, there are no ethics. That's the bottom line.
Yep. So amazing.
Guess we had a little mic drop there. So where do we start from there? Anyway.
Yeah, I guess I'll just add one last thing. Is like, I think we're probably a couple years out before like a robust, regulatory framework exists around AI. So it's important that these companies put in the processes, the guardrails, the protocols in place to make sure that they actually take care and are ethical with their applications. Because it's always tough when companies have to police themselves, and in the experience has shown that they don't necessarily do a good job. But hopefully, as the technology matures, they can actually take an effort here and really set the precedent.
So as we're winding down, I'd love for each of you to send us off. We came to it with partnerships, and AI took up a lot of the oxygen, but we know that that's driving partnerships and everything from DoD to
Sorry,
healthcare.
Michael.
All right.
Keep going. Sorry.
No. So please, each of you, just send us off. We have a few minutes left. I'd love to hear just, a takeaway. Tom, Andy, each of you, please. We have a few more minutes.
No, I mean, I thought, so first of all, thank you all. Learned so much about this. Susan, love to pick your brain on how to create an AI board. I think we've got a portfolio company it's a company called Revo.ai. And so it's interesting. It's an AI company called remote monitoring for cars. So our big vision is that our initial product is focused on tire pressure monitoring, but we're also wired into the telematics solution. And so we could be the operating system for a lot of the sort of autonomous function on the vehicle. But again, shameless plug on Revo. But thinking about how do we regulate the AI, right? So we've got this really cool edge compute algorithm that's given us a tremendous amount of reduction in power consumption. I know we talked about power consumption and AI in this talk, and I know that's a key issue that we didn't double click on, but it's something that keeps me up at night. But it was interesting how building edge computing, compute on the device as opposed to out on the sort of cloud, gave our sensor, our device, a lot more horsepower, and a significant amount of battery life. And so as we think about scaling that up into other applications and trying to become, sort of an edge compute or an edge AI company, we do want to kind of regulate that and monitor that. So would love to double click on how you create an AI board. I almost think of AI is greater than any human, right? It has the potential to be greater than any human. So it's weird to me to think about that humans are monitoring AI, but or governing it for that matter, when it could very much govern us someday, right? Which is, I think, where the jury's out. People are saying AI is going to tell me what to do, not the other way around. But I think what you were talking about was just really from an ethical perspective. So anyway, that's my takeaway from today's session. I thought that was awesome. I really appreciate everybody's thoughts on. I look forward, Andy, to tracking, to being able to leverage an AI tool that could help me navigate my healthcare experiences, right? I think I've been looking for something like that for 20 years now as an investor. I do think AI is the potential to kind of solve that, and I think we're at sort of a nexus point. So yeah, this was really great. No really eye-opening thoughts from my end, other than I think AI has the potential to scale some unique strategic partnerships for a lot of organizations out there. So it's very promising, and look forward to tracking some of the leapfrogging going on.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll go next. I would maybe first off, wonderful session, Michael, and thank you so much for inviting me. I think all the talk on partnerships and all the talk on AI, which I know AI takes over conversations, but because it's everywhere and it's going to continue to take over conversations. But I think maybe what I would do is just give a little bit of advice. There's if an organization doesn't have a partner program yet, I think my biggest piece of advice was just make sure that you actually have product market fit, that your product actually drives value, and that you have ROI with your clients. If none of those are true, partnerships won't actually fix that problem. And so I really concentrate on that. Those who are thinking about starting a partner program and hiring partner executives. I think the second piece of advice, when you start a partner program, there's sometimes the thought that all of these leads are immediately going to start flowing in. And it's not really a part of that. Like, building partnerships is about building trust and about building that better together story. And so those things take time. They really do. And it's not like a typical sales cycle. Like these things take time and effort and resources and cross-functional resources most of the time. And so if you think about building a partner program up, just have realistic expectations, and then make sure to give the individuals that you put in those places, just make sure that they're also working well cross-functionally. Because if you think in partnerships, we are BD, we are sales, we work hand in hand with product, we work hand in hand with technology, we work really closely with marketing. And so I think when you're thinking about standing that up, just make sure to have all of those pieces in place, because partners are an amplifier of a really good product market fit and a really good ROI. And that's where you can take that same ROI, product market fit value that you create, and you can bring it to, your cloud hyperscalers to help you take it to market. You can bring in your ISV partners. You can bring in product partners. You can even go for potential OEMs or reseller models. But just understand all of those are built on proof points, and having those proof points are incredibly important. And so that would be my biggest piece of advice. But this has been wonderful. I really appreciate you having me on the show.
Yeah, just to add, thank you again, Michael, and to the rest of the team. Really productive conversation. Awesome conversation. And just to like bring it up to like a more macro level, is like healthcare is just has been in a kind of a crossroad for a while. But we're seeing like a lot of interesting things uniquely right now, where it's like collaboration across sectors, right? You have traditional players like providers, payers, et cetera. And then you have like new tech companies like Best Buy, et cetera, like that are entering, this and kind of disrupting, how models have traditionally operated. And then you also have like more broad scale kind of partnerships like ecosystems rather than, and like platforms rather than like just traditional one-off partnerships that have really driven, how healthcare and health tech have operated in the past few years. And then again, to bring it back to AI, is like a lot of these are going to be AI driven for the next, few years until a clear winner has kind of been determined out of this health tech arms race. So as like companies kind of think of their strategies, it's important to kind of layer in, all the things that everyone else is talking about, but like really think of it, as a really innovative and, disruptive way, right? This is how the cool stuff happens is, people come together, they work together, and they build something awesome. So I'll pass it to Susan to drop the mic again on us.
Thanks, Hamza. And gentlemen, I took 2 pages of notes, so I appreciate you all, and I hope that we do stay connected. I want to piggyback on Andy's baton pass. So going back to the partnerships, I'll just quickly share a story. So when your startup is very limited in funds, one of the best ways you can be exposed to new clients is if your partner puts you in their booth at National Retail Federation or puts you in their booth at HIMSS, which is the big healthcare conference, whatever it is. And to be able to say to your partner, what KPIs do we need to meet in order for us to be one of your featured startups in your booth? Because to be able to have that opportunity is worth a significant opportunity in terms of deal flow. And Tom, I spent 6 years in Edge. Not many people can say that. Edge, I'm more familiar with Edge than Gen AI, like, all day, every day. But from the partnership piece of it, be willing to ask the tough questions, because where you want to get to, the holy grail, is when that partner has their sales force out there selling for you. And in my background in B2B, we had leads coming in every day to the point like VCs would look at our sales pipeline and they would have a complete jaw drop. And it wasn't because we had salespeople, it was because we had partners. And those leads were coming in from, I won't name the big company names, but they were coming in from all of them because we were deploying something that had a tremendous use for all of their particular customers. So the last thing I want to say is, if you try and be everything to everyone, you're going to be no one to no one. Yep. And going back to what Andy talked about and Tom talked about and Humza, you talked about the competition, you want to take a look at who is out there in your market and say, how can I be really world-class at this one piece of the ecosystem? Because that is going to open you up to more VC funding as a team player, as I started the conversation with, looking at where the VCs have made other investments, how you can collaborate with those companies. It's going to position you as a team player in your partnership ecosystem. And everyone loves to work with a team player. And it's going to make you a lot more attractive in terms of overall M&A. And I don't know why you're doing a startup unless you want to have some form of an exit. So that's what I would say just to close us up. But again, Michael, thank you so much for having me, and what an amazing discussion.
Well, thank you all for joining us. This has been a great journey. And until next time, friends.
Thank you.